beard. I'm telling her. Here we go. All right, we will call to order the Lennox Board of Adjustment. First, we have, are there any additions or can I get an approval of the agenda?
Make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Second. Motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
On to the public hearing for the variance for 504 West First Avenue.
Commissioners, the owners of 504 West First Avenue requested a variance under Chapter 18 of our zoning ordinances. The application comes in conjunction with a temporary construction easement that was approved by both the owners and the City Council. Of course, the Central Basin 4 project, a non-compliant driveway was eliminated from the property. You can see that in the exhibit on page 1 in the pink shaded or salmon shaded area. The owners also agreed to allow the use of their property as temporary access for residents of North Academy and Sunset Circle. Without that access, residents of the neighborhood are unable to access their homes in the better part of the summer. So we're certainly grateful for their cooperation there. While discussing the easement, the owners expressed an interest in building a new unattached garage on the property, but because current setbacks and location would not be compliant. So the City of Lennox agreed to entertain a variance for setbacks. As the eastern wall of the garage would be below the minimum allowed. So that's on page 2 of the exhibit. That would be the second front yard, according to our ordinances, and I think that's a 20, needs to be 20, and this shows 15. I have in the memo and in front of you the ordinance that governs variances and the issues to be considered whether or not the issuance of a variance is justified. There's 6 bullet points there, including unnecessary hardship, literal interpretation of provisions would deprive the applicant of the rights commonly enjoyed by other properties. The variance requested is the minimum variance that will alleviate the hardship. Granting of the variance will comply with the general purpose and intent of the ordinance and will not be offensive to the adjacent areas or to public welfare. No non-conforming use or structures in the same district and no permitted or non-conforming use or structure in other districts shall be considered as the sole grounds for issuance of a variance. And exceptional or extraordinary circumstances apply to property that do not apply to other properties in the same zone or vicinity. Just a few notes that I would add on here. I don't think this specific board has ever had a variance in front of it, so you may attach conditions to variances. And variances are subject to court review within 30 days. So if someone would challenge it, for example, that it could be challenged in court hearing. So I don't believe the owners are here tonight.
So under current code, they would have to be 20 foot off of Academy. That's what you're saying? Or 20 foot off of the right of way. And so they're 5 feet less than the requirement.
Correct.
Is there a reason they can't go closer to the house?
I think that's because, so where you see that 12-foot driveway stopping there on the west side, that comes all the way around.
Okay, so they wouldn't be able to fit a vehicle.
So there's a north driveway on Academy that loops around, and that's what was previously terminating at the corner. So now it would go up, it's going to go out to First Avenue instead. And they want to keep that access open.
Do they not have a garage on this property? I thought they already
I
had.
think there's a single stall on the north side, if I remember right. Mr. Chairman, before we get too deep into discussion, just ask for any proponents or opponents.
Is there anyone that would like to speak to the variance at 504 West First Avenue? See none. See none. We can keep on discussing. Is it 20 feet? I thought it was 25. But maybe
It's 25 for the front.
Oh.
The second front yard can be reduced to 20.
Okay. Second.
So what deeds is the first front yard and what deeds is the second front
Is
yard?
it where their address
It's
is?
the address.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
so it's first avenue.
Yep. It's kind of a arbitrary determination, because if somebody wanted to call Academy their address, in a case like this, we'd be perfectly fine with that. It was established as 504 West First quite a while ago, so.
Yeah.
I'm guessing this would require a curb cut where that driveway is or not?
No, not at this point. It was part of this project.
Okay.
It wasn't really part of the project. It's inside the limits of the project simply because of our tie-ins.
Okay.
So new curb and gutter was installed just past the curb driveway. And we had already planned, it wasn't done until after we had accepted where the driveway was going to be there, so.
So they dropped the curb already there.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, no further curb and gutter work would be necessary.
So this was basically already kind of agreed on with the shot of maybe this happening, or that, I mean, they had already planned on this garage happening, it was just for where they want to put it, they need a variance for it. It's gonna probably go there regardless.
If they're going to do it, that's where they would like it to be.
Right. But they're probably gonna be doing a garage regardless, but depends where we go.
Yeah, if the variance is not approved, my assumption is it would go elsewhere on the property. Probably on the north side, if I remember right, that's probably the only spot that's really, unless you shift this further to the west or reduce the 30 to 25.
I suppose they want two stall in front.
Mhm. I mean, there was talk of, instead of having the garage door openings on the south, to make it open on the west towards the house, which you could use to reduce the depth of the garage east and west if you needed to.
I mean, I don't necessarily think it's close enough to the intersection to really hamper any.
Visually, you can
Yeah.
still see around the corner.
Yeah, it's well outside of our safety zone.
Yeah.
Yep. I have been in the area and spoken with a couple of the neighbors, and it didn't seem like anybody had any real objection to any idea like this. So, of course, it's noticed, it's public noticed on the property and in the paper.
It was a very big front yard,
Yes,
there's a lot of room out there.
it is.
Any further discussion?
Motion to approve the variance for reducing from 20 to 15 feet setback.
Second?
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Chairman, before we have a motion to adjourn, can I have you officially close out the public hearing?
I would like to close the public hearing at 7:08. And then I can get a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
Second?
Motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, the Board of Adjustment is adjourned. Let's move on to planning and zoning. Any additions or approvals?
under new business, I would like to add an item to discuss the conditional use permit at 228 North Main. I'll leave that up to the commission whether you want that as item A under new business or item C.
Okay, anything else? Motion to approve the agenda.
Second?
A motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, comprehensive plan, public hearing.
Commissioners, you have in front of you the final, what I hope is the final draft of the comprehensive plan. It's taking into account the maps that we discussed at the last meeting. You
I don't
have
think
We
we
don't
have
have
it.
Hey, he's got one.
No, yeah, I've
it.
got
You
it.
got the map
Older.
from the last one.
I got the last one.
Oh,
Okay. If you like, I can print off.
no,
That's right. Otherwise, I feel like you've seen,
I can. Is it on our,
It's
is it on the
entirety.
board docs,
it is.
the new one?
Yeah.
Okay.
The only thing that's changed is those maps are added in now.
Wait, you mean in this?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
The maps are on there.
So page 19 has the major streets plan. Page 23 includes the future land use plan. We are, assuming that this does get approved tonight and then approved by the city council, Mitch and I talked about making sure that future land use map and streets plan is added as a layer on the city's GIS. So can anybody be able to see that at any time on there? I believe that's the only changes, so. Obviously, it was issued for public notice, for public hearing tonight. If the commission recommends approval, we'll have it in front of the city council for a public hearing on December 27th. I recommend opening the public hearing for comment.
Is there anyone here to speak on the comprehensive plan? See none. So then, do you want me to close it? Or just let it- leave it open?
You'll leave it open until discussion is complete, I suppose.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm thinking everything looks good to me.
It's been quite a process. I think we started this in March, does that sound right? Yeah. First committee meetings, and, yeah.
Maps look good.
was anything changed since the last meeting? No.
In the document. I think the only thing that's changed in the last, probably 7 or 8 weeks was, I think Vendrio had some
Typo.
typos that needed to be wrapped up.
It's unfortunate the surveys didn't have more
Yeah.
involvement. That was probably the only thing I was disappointed in.
It's always hit and miss, you know, we do a monthly survey, of course, and, you know, some months we'll get 5 responses, some months we'll get 30. The 2 surveys that we've received the most input on in the past were, I think it was a Parks and Rec one, and we wanted to gauge some interest on holding Parks and Rec programs during 2020, during the pandemic. And there was a survey about garbage service, maybe a year or 2 years ago, and that got a lot of interest on it as well.
Any more discussion?
Looks great to me.
So if it is, if you're so moved, we recommend the motion to recommend approval to the city council.
I make a motion, we recommend approval to the city council.
A second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. On to visitors to be heard. If you would like to speak, you can step up to the podium, give us your name and address, and have at it.
Good evening, Sarah Stever, I live at 46850, 276th Street, also the location of Stever House Bed and Breakfast, so I'm your neighbor.
Okay.
My husband John and I run the Stever House Bed and Breakfast, and even though we live out of town, Lennox is our home, and our kids graduated from LHS. I'm here tonight to bring an issue to your attention and to ask you to act. Our property sits less than half a mile from the Summit Carbon Solutions 24-inch CO2 pipeline. That's about 3/4 a mile north of Klondike, which is 276th Street. You all probably take it every day. Navigator's pipeline was slated to be installed half a mile south of our property and run parallel to the Klondike to Chancellor. Navigator shut down their pipeline project, but Summit is looking to pick up that line and, according to their statements, move 2 miles south. If that happens, that puts Lennox in a zone where a rupture of the pipe puts every resident of our community at even greater risk than before with the Navigator 8-inch pipeline. These pipelines are compressed to a supercritical state of 2100 psi in order for the CO2 to move efficiently. 2100 psi, not like your tire at 40 psi, 2100 psi. This is not a natural gas or water line, and concentrated CO2 is an asphyxiant, even used to kill hogs during the slaughter process. Summit has never built a pipeline, and their project will be the largest CO2 pipeline in the U.S. should it go through, covering 5 states. They've already moved to condemn the land of 160 farmers and landowners in South Dakota, and seem willing to do anything to cash in on the billions of dollars made available by the U.S. government. I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but in Satarka, Mississippi, there was a guillotine rupture of a 24-inch pipeline, and 2 miles away, 45 people were sent to the hospital. So it can be a very dangerous situation that happened back just 2 years ago. A couple things I'd like you to remember. Summit will not share their rupture plume models because they say they are a national security and terrorist risk. Navigator shared part of their model, which was all we've got to go on. So we've created some maps from that, and I'm happy to share that with you. This is the old map before they moved the pipeline, so we don't have that because we don't know exactly where the route is now. We're still in the dark on that.
That was a flume map, you said? What
Yes.
was that?
Yep. So Navigator made theirs public, and that's how we were, that and I studied 4 other plume research models to come up with that. Installing pipelines in farmland lowers yields for decades and marks clearly where the pipeline is. So for them to say that it's a national security and terrorist risk to show us their plume models is kind of funny because you can tell exactly where these pipelines go. The land doesn't recover for decades. Pipeline easements are forever, in case you don't know that when you sign one. You can never build over it, and you can't plant trees, and they're anywhere from 100 feet to 150 feet from the pipeline, and they can access them at any time. Summit's got foreign ownership. I think that's important to understand. And the PUC, if you follow the hearings at all, did not give them a permit because they didn't fulfill any of the requirements that the state was requesting. Current CO2 pipelines are currently unregulated, and their economic models are based on data that they provided to the economists, hardly an impartial model. So landowners are being informed they will not be covered for bodily injury or property damage from their insurance companies. I've got 4 letters to prove that in the packet I'll leave with you. And I don't think that our families need to be subjected to this dangerous and pointless pipeline. So if you can help by submitting comments to the Carbon Dioxide Transport and Storage Committee, which is happening now at the county, at Lincoln County, that would be really helpful. And I've got a sheet I can pass out to you. So it's got a QR code on it. And if you want to help by making comments, that would be awesome. I'm happy to answer any questions. Just a regular citizen trying to do my thing. So thanks for giving me the time.
Thank you for
Stopping
bringing all
in.
that good information. I didn't realize they were looking at moving the pipeline. I kind of read it in the paper over the last however many years it's been going on. But.
Oh, wait till she's ready.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So many things. I also forgot to mention, we've got letters from the Mayor of Harrisburg, the Mayor of Worthington, the Mayor of Canton, the Mayor of Fairview, and a resolution from Fairview Township, all trying to do something because Lincoln County hasn't done anything. And right now, we're completely unprotected from, they could put pipelines right up to your house if they want. And I can't find my cover of this. So there's the mayor letters.
Okay.
Here, review. There's a clip. What else can I give you?
Checkbook?
What'd you say?
Checkbook?
There's nothing in it. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's a chocolate. That sounded good too.
Floor's yours.
My name is Tony Ventura. I'm actually on the committee with Lincoln County. I've been writing ordinances for 3 years. I'll give it right for any county, township, city that wants it. At the PUC for Navigator, which my wife has land that's affected by, they challenged the Minnehaha County and they challenged Mooley County that said that you can't preempt the pipeline. The PUC sent back specific regulations that they have the right to write the ordinances route their lines. And immediately after that, PHMSA, which is the Pipeline National Organization, said that you guys have the role in designing, placing, routing, and then designing a smart development plan for this. And so somebody coming in and saying you can't do this because federal government said because it's like natural gas is not correct. And so if you're moving this from 276 to 278, I mean, that's almost driving it right down the center, isn't it, of this town? And so it's not a thing of when, but how fast you need to act. And so I'm encouraging you to talk to the mayor, talk to the council, try to get a plan in place, because I know you're working on a comprehensive plan. And the next thing is ask for a 6-mile joint jurisdiction discussion with the county. And the reason behind that is not just because of this, but because of other things. If something comes in and it's going to affect your future growth, you have the right to bring them in and say no. And that is an important factor for a small city that's trying to grow and get bigger. And I want to protect the cities and the towns and the people. And that's the reason why I've been doing this for 3 years out of my own pocket. Any questions?
For this pipeline, they need an easement to go through the property, don't they?
The eminent domain is what their easement is. So they can sign and get an easement, but even survey lawsuits, let me go back if I can for a second. The company said they're gonna come survey your property. We said under state law, we have the right to refuse because you haven't followed all the guidelines of the state. So the way the state law is written, and I think it was very smart by our forefathers and foremothers, was if you're a good person or a good company, you can go in and you'll sign that easement so they can go through and do their business. What it says right now is they have to obtain an easement from myself and my renters and lessees. I don't have to tell them who they are until they go to eminent domain. So that was the first step, and then people got sued. The second one is they go in and the prices they're offering are ridiculous. And the land, you lose so much control of your land. In fact, part of the contract I read was they have the right to access at any time, at any point of your property. And then if I wanted to plant trees, build a building, put up a house, I had to get consent from the company on the entire quarter. And so to me, it makes no sense. And you're right, they do need an easement, but it's fair practice. I mean, we've had 6 offers on our farm, and the 7th is now wind farm, or solar farms, excuse me. And so we are looking for the right developer, the right people, and the landowner, which is the person that's been there for many, many years, should be the one that makes that decision. A 125-year-old farm that has never gone through bankruptcy, that has always been an American citizen, that always has paid their taxes, should be the ones that we're protecting. And it seems like these multi-billion-dollar corporations are just trying to wipe us off the map. And that's a scary deal. And once again, it's hard to compete as a 125-year-old generational farm when newer farms are coming in. And so that's another process. But you lose your people when this stuff happens. You lose your population, the towns shrink. I've seen that happen in Colorado and other places with other projects. And so I just want you to be very aware. But yeah, it has not been a good situation. It's cost a lot of money. But when it comes to writing ordinances, if you guys are interested, I can try to help you. That's free charge. And that's a gift to anybody because you don't have to spend a lot of the money. But the townships are passing ordinances. There is one that has passed an ordinance that will become law of the land in that township, since we don't have anything in Lincoln. So I appreciate
A township within Lincoln County?
Huh?
A township in Lincoln County is already passing an ordinance for it?
It has passed. We're just waiting for it to go through the paper and the final process of the citizens can overturn it. So it's an important thing to start looking at the standards that other people, other cities are acting for, and then what do you want your town to become?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, we'll move on to the minutes from the October 26th meeting.
Make a motion we approve the minutes from the October 26th meeting.
Second. Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Kyle, building official report.
Construction update, 149 new permits since January 1st. Some of the permits that were added since our last meeting, add another siding, roof, windows type projects. 3 more fencing permits, 3 decks, 1 shed placement, flat work permits. Then we did add 2 new permits for 2 new fourplexes in Countryside. And as far as commercial, we got the permit for 1 big yard.
Cool. Then my code enforcement updates. Since the last meeting, I noted 8 parking on unimproved surface violations and then 1 for rubbish and junk. Any questions? Thank you, Kyle. Old business, ordinance number 644, short-term rentals.
Commissioners, you requested a draft ordinance addressing regulation of short-term rentals within city limits. So the one in front of you, I think I printed that one off tonight.
Ordinance 643.
6-4, yeah.
I got it.
So this is meant to establish or give you opportunity to provide feedback for any changes on such an ordinance. It was modeled after option B in the guide we had from Granicus. It establishes it as an allowable use under our ordinances under a conditional use permit. The additional requirements to be met include no conversion of existing rental properties into a short-term rental property. Proof of sale tax license is required. No signs permitted, and required annual inspection against the IPMC. I would request significant discussion regarding the inspections aspect of this ordinance. We don't currently inspect other rental properties. And if you're starting here, it could go our responsibility into inspecting all rental properties, something that we just don't have the capacity for at this point. So, the owners of the 2 short-term rental properties in Lennox were invited to attend tonight. I did have discussion with one prior to attending. Both agreed during that discussion that the trick here is to establish what's a reasonable regulation without discouraging the establishment of new short-term opportunities. So this is our first opportunity as a community to dip our toes into this tourism space, and we don't want to necessarily stifle that growth as it is financially beneficial to the community. But there are obviously concerns that the commission has had, and we want to make sure that those are addressed. So would encourage additional discussion on where that line between reasonable and burdensome exists, and take feedback and make changes as necessary.
In lieu of an inspection, does it make sense to just say you're held to these standards and put kind of the onus on them to comply?
So instead of a required annual inspection, simply requiring that they comply with the IPMC.
Correct.
Right.
That'd be what I
Which would be
propose.
applicable to any property in town,
Right.
but we're naming it specifically here.
Right, that way if there was a violation visible, you don't really have grounds to enforce, but, or to revoke, the conditional use necessarily. I don't know, that's tricky.
Well, I mean,
To put the enforcement on,
if you require compliance with the IPMC as a condition of the conditional use permit,
then it
then you could revoke if there is something out of line. I think Kyle would agree, I hope I'm not putting words in his mouth, that you can find an IPMC violation on any property in town.
Yeah.
Most of them minor, but they exist. If you don't have any language in here about the IPMC, our standard regulations would just apply. You know, we'll handle it as any other code enforcement issue.
If you don't have an annual inspection, how are you gonna know if they're not following the
The
IPC?
internal.
Yeah, unless you, like, something bad happens, and somebody gets hurt, or,
The only way you would know is if you get, maybe
complaint.
a complaint from one of the guests that stayed there. These rentals all have pictures online, you know, when you do a VRBO or an Airbnb. And I'm sure I'm not the only one, though it's probably a small crowd that does this. Looking through those pictures, you'll see certain things and think, oh, that's not really compliant with building code or something like that. I don't think we're gonna go look at pictures online every month and make sure it is, but the only way you're gonna know on the internal is if you get a complaint.
And some of that regulation will self-regulate, I feel like, say stair tread height is not to compliance, people will stop renting there, or stop, going there.
Yeah, if there's something that's out of,
That makes it
parts of this will
uncomfortable
be
or
handled by the
uns-
market, right?
Yeah,
As for this IPMC part, I don't see why it's any different than any of the other properties in town, so I don't know why we would have to specify that in this, conditional use permit personally.
if the city's already adopted it, is that what you're saying?
Right.
It already
Yeah.
applies.
Exactly.
The only reason, now I'd have to go back to the video of the last meeting, I can't remember exactly what the discussion was, but there was talk about inspections. And really the only benefit having it in here as a condition is that it can give you the right to revoke on a much faster basis than our regular code enforcement process would. That's the only benefit.
So if they didn't have proof of sales tax license, that wouldn't give us the ability to revoke their?
It would.
Okay,
Yep.
I'm just, yeah. So there's other things in this ordinance that could give us the ability to revoke?
Correct.
I don't know if you can prohibit the existing rentals turning into short-term rentals.
It's a tough one.
Cause it's, I mean, you can't do that. I mean, it's their property. You can't say, you can rent it by the month, but you can't rent it by the day.
Right.
That's, you can't put that in there. Not just as a personal, that person that owns rentals, but
Right.
just as a human being, you can't.
Yeah,
Tell
I think
people
that
if they
was,
can rent their house.
I think that might have been one of Sandy's suggestions, if
Yeah.
I remember right.
I backed that, just because I feel like we have a shortage of
There is.
housing in this community already, especially for lower income families. So I just feel like losing that would be a detriment to the town. I suppose they could come, would they have the ability to come to us if they wanted to rezone and we could make an exception for that, if they were to want to convert?
The conversion wouldn't require any rezoning. You know, if it's already a single family, and even in multifamily zone, you can have a single family residence. So if, right now, there's nothing that would prohibit anybody from converting single family residence into a multifamily rental or a rental property, for example. We don't have any ordinances on that.
And it's also not on the public to keep affordable housing. It's on the city to encourage affordable housing. You know, you cannot tell someone that they can't make more money by renting something out day to day because you want affordable housing for everybody. There's people that will keep doing affordable housing because they think it's a needed thing. But you can't require people to do what you want them to do. That's all I'm gonna say.
Is there a conditional use permit required for short-term rental properties?
Right now,
That dumb question.
no. There's no regulation of them whatsoever on our ordinance.
I think the main reason we wanted to do this was for the taxes. Basically, so people know they have to report sales tax on those. I mean, that's the biggest reason. It's not to
And
lord
awareness,
over them. It's just
awareness
to,
for the neighbors too,
Yep,
or a chance to.
that's it. It's not to go into people's houses and look at everything. It's not to say you can do this and you can't do this. It's to make the public aware that there's a rental next to them and to make sure they're following the rules of that wonderful tax that everyone has to pay.
I would agree with that.
So I would say, for me, I would get rid of the not being able to convert your own house into whatever you want. And I think it's fine keeping the IPMC in there listed, just so it's a tool in the toolbox. I mean, it's not like we're gonna, like I said, we're not gonna go into people's houses looking to make sure they have everything they need.
So you're saying amend this to not doing inspection, but the short-term rental must meet the IPMC
Yeah.
standards or?
Yeah, just put it as a condition on the
Yeah.
use, yep.
Do you add a tagline and maybe subject to inspection or not even?
All houses are subject to inspection.
Yeah.
It's already there. I don't,
Is that something that kind of just do, when you go into a house, because he's heard concerns with the property, I mean?
It's a little
Is that
more
what you-
complicated than that, but
Right.
we do have the authority under the IPMC to enter if necessary. You'll know, the property at 317 North Main that the city council voted to condemn this week. That's probably the most recent example we have, but even in that case, we still did go and get a warrant from the court to inspect, so.
Yeah, it's fine, or treading that line of, yeah, doing an inspection for just a standard rental property and also short-term rental, and where do you draw the line? somebody that's gonna stay in a house for a week and somebody that's gonna stay in a house for a year.
Mhm.
6
What's the
months.
difference?
Yeah, I mean, what is the difference? I think that's where, you're right, it's like,
Did you make a motion to?
I can't
put it
make
that way?
motions.
Oh, okay, well, I'll.
That's why I'm always
Oh.
like,
Yeah, so you don't necessarily have to either. I mean,
Yeah.
this is more discussion tonight. If you're not comfortable with where it's at, then let's discuss that, go back and recraft. And now to add that the city, I haven't run this by the city attorney yet either. So this is more getting this thing right before we get it to the next stage, and making sure that it meets your approval. So what I'm hearing is a removal on the restriction on conversions. Is that?
Yeah.
Okay. And then on the annual inspection, what's the consensus there?
I'd say probably remove it.
but
I'm
I
sure
would
that's
say, just say required compliance with city's adopted IPMC. Remove the inspection piece.
alright, let's move on to the in-home daycare conditional use permits.
Commissioners, you have in front of you the floor plan review guide from the, I think it's from DSS, if I remember right. Yeah, Department of Social Services. Kyle obviously sent this around earlier, but I think it's time to have some discussion of whether you want to do anything with this or not. Is it something where you want to do something differently with conditional use permits for in-home daycares? Right now, it's essentially treated as a home occupation, though. There's just, we don't have anything real specific, as Mr. Welby pointed out last meeting, that says you must do these things. It's really more tradition and practice that we've been requiring certain things than it is a requirement in our ordinances. So, it's just an opportunity to have that discussion, and if you feel so moved, we'll start drafting an ordinance on this as well. It is already required as a conditional use for a residential property, but again, similar to the inspections, the restriction on conversions, no signs, you can put additional requirements in there for in-home daycares. So.
I know it was thrown out before that we should maybe just model it after the state, and I'm just going to say I completely disagree with that, only because I don't think that a lot of the in-home daycares will meet fully these requirements, and I think that will greatly limit the amount of in-home, or daycares in general that we have in town. I think that's on the person who's sending their kid to daycare to decide whether that home, if they're comfortable having their child there. That's just my 2 cents.
Kyle, I know IBC addresses daycare facilities. Does IRC as well? In terms of like ages, like I know IBC talks about children under the age of 5 in certain quantities. Are you familiar?
I can't think of anything.
Not the residential.
Because I didn't know
The
if that
IBC
would
treat
kind
it as a commercial
Right.
daycare center.
right.
You know,
That's why I didn't know. if
similar
that-
to what these requirements would be.
I just didn't know if there was already an adopted code that would kind of cover some of the life safety concerns that we had.
Would it be worth looking at what the IBC requires for
That might be helpful to model
institutional
after,
daycares?
because they kind of
Fence
similar
play
to,
areas, egress,
yes,
those
yep.
kinds of things.
And the basic idea of it is that children of a certain age have the capacity to egress themselves,
Mm-hmm.
whereas younger kids might not, and so that just
You
has
can't
different
put
requirements.
babies in a basement,
Yeah,
type of thing.
yeah.
And maybe it's a thing where we put if we come up with guidelines that we would like follow, put it together, a little handout that when you get your conditional use permit, we, you know, you bring in your layout and all this, and we go over it, and
These are
Give
our
'em-
expectations.
yep. And then, I mean, that's at least giving them some knowledge of things that they can look at in their house to make it safer for
Yeah.
the kids. So I think something like that would probably be okay.
I don't think it'd be bad to like have, I don't know, at least some just like, I wouldn't say basic, but like maybe clear cut things that are just, you wouldn't expect any daycare to have, cause you're exactly right. I wouldn't, you don't wanna like make it harder for a daycare to be in town because there's not very many options as there is. Speaking from experience, there's just no options. And so, like you wanna encourage it still, but you also wanna have like the basic like safety necessities, cause like some of the conditional use permits that we've received, I mean, it's very like, we don't know anything of like what's in the house other than like their floor plan. Not that like we need to go.
We don't know that that's the actual floor plan.
Right.
Right.
Right, and like, I mean, there are, I mean, risks in there, and I agree, there is like, it's a parent's responsibility to go in there, do the tour of the house, but it's like, on any given day, a parent could go in there and the house is all dressed up really nice for when they first see the house, and, I mean, there are situations where like a parent just drops their kid off at the front door and then leaves and they don't see it for the inside of the house for a month, and so it's like, I do think there's some level of an inspection that's needed, and like a random annual one. I mean, an annual, once a year, I don't think is a bad thing. I mean, I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. Like we brought up in the last one, I mean, restaurants, it's required. I mean, these children are being fed.
How many
by-
conditional use permits do we have on file for daycares?
I would bet 10 in the time I've been here.
Yeah, so that's
5 years.
one a month for Kyle. I mean, that's not a overload. I mean, look at him, he's just sitting there now.
I like how they gave that to you.
Yeah, I'm fine with either way.
And I don't necessarily know that it needs to be a requirement, but I think it should be an option, you know, that we can
But they agree that we're authorized to
Yes.
enter and
just show up whenever to visit, say hi to the kids, read a book, Kyle.
now we're talking.
Yep.
Yeah, if you stipulate that we're going to inspect, then that sets the expectation that we are annually going to be there. And if we don't meet that expectation, then
It gives a consistent requirement for them to meet, I think is the whole thing.
that's why I think the random, we could stop in, also keeps you regulate meeting requirements.
You just need to do it though, once in a while, because I guarantee the daycare people talk to each other. So if you happen to show up at one day, the rest of them are gonna know.
Yeah, I think if you plan on doing them all in 1 week, by Wednesday,
Right.
everybody's gonna be up
Yeah,
on speed.
I think if you stop in at one, you're probably good for a month, you know?
yeah.
Everyone else is gonna be cleaned up, but.
I would support that. My question then would be, what are the things that Kyle would be looking for when he stops in? I mean,
Smoke detectors,
Fire life safety.
Basic
stuff.
life
Yep.
safety stuff.
plug covers on, or tamper resistant.
Baby
or
gates.
Yep.
That kind of stuff.
If there's a window that's too close to the ground, it can only open so far. If it's on the, if it's up off the ground, just that kind of stuff.
Well, Kyle come up with an inspection checklist of things that
Yeah,
should be on there too.
doesn't need to, look in their closets, but just, make sure.
Well, maybe he wants to. Make
Yeah.
sure there's no kids in there.
Well, I think Liz, you hinted
like the number of kids like per adult, I know that's like a really common one, and for in-home daycares, is there even a restriction?
It has to be under 12, if I remember.
12 for one adult?
Yeah.
It's like, if there's not a lot of options in town, it's like, well, there's 10 kids in here, I guess, I mean, I need a daycare provider, and so, I mean, it's
Yeah.
also kind of protecting the kids to a degree too. I'm not saying we should allow 8, but I mean, I don't know, I'm not an expert on daycares, but I do think there needs to be at least some stipulation for what's allowed.
Well, and that number of kids flexes too, obviously, in the school year, there's gonna be less during the day than there is after school, if they're not going to the after-school program, and
Based on shift
Summer.
work or,
Yeah. Is there still a limit if they're not registered at the state?
yeah, if you're over, I think if it's over 12, then you have to be registered, if I remember right. There's a state minimum for licensure.
Well, right here on this page 3, it says center license for 13 to 20, so I'm,
Yeah, yep.
And then I think you have to have an adult for every 8 kids or something? Over a certain age?
I know you're not supposed to have more than 2 under 2
Yeah. 2 under 2,
per adult, I guess, I think is how it's.
yeah.
Good practice anyway.
Yeah.
I wouldn't, yeah.
Yeah, I think I'll come up with a little list, and we'll.
I'll come up with, some draft language for, you know, if we wanna do an inspection, we'll take a look at IBC, see what that says, and we'll come back with some recommendations.
Sounds good.
Okay, on to new business, 228 North Main, conditional use permit.
Commissioners, you'll recall that back.
So I guys get Nancy.
Back in July, you approved a conditional use permit for this property, just for the western portion where this work was going to be done. I wanted to bring it up because we passed the deadline for some of the work to happen, and I wanted to make sure you're aware. The holder of the conditional use permit is here tonight, Joel Buswell, to speak and answer any questions, but, so there were 4 conditions on this. The off-street parking need to be met by 11/1, signage by 11/1, security lighting to be installed by 11/1, and then that it applied only to Joel Buswell's use of Unit A, the western portion of the building, and not the entire property. So the security lighting is complete, the signage is not, and the off-street parking is not. We do have I believe the permits are pulled for parking. Everything's been approved, but it hasn't happened yet, so. Knowing the challenges with this particular property, I just wanted to make sure that we had this in front of you for any discussion or alterations, or just get some feedback on what, if anything, you would like to see happen. Like I said, Joel is here too as well, so if you have questions for him, I'm sure he'd be happy to answer.
Just, the parking, was that just because he couldn't get someone to complete the work? Yeah. Have you been in contact with the
Yes.
contractor? Okay.
Yes.
Are you on their schedule?
Yes.
Okay, good.
We're supposed to be.
I think it's just a question of how quick that schedule is. And,
Yeah.
Is it gonna be concrete now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Uh,
Do they plan on still trying to do it this year, or wait until spring now?
Well, we had planned on it yet this fall, or this winter,
Yeah,
so.
I mean, it's been pretty nice lately.
Yeah.
Well, and you
And
can
that way
change the
too.
admixtures a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did talk to Joel a little bit before the meeting tonight and learned who the planned contractor is. I'm
Grown.
familiar with him, so I can
Yeah.
shoot him a message and find out, is this something that's gonna happen this year or not? So,
Well, see, the thing is, he wants to do his property at the same time as, he's the owner of both places.
Yeah,
He's doing his driveway at the same time as our parking lot. So he's trying to coordinate it all at one time, so.
Doesn't seem like there's a question of it not happening. It sounds like it's gonna happen.
It's gonna happen.
If the owner of the property wants to do it, then I
Yeah.
think it's.
He's
for sure
gonna do it,
happen. And
you got a line on a sign?
That's done. He's had pneumonia, he can't get over to apply it. That's going in the front window,
Okay,
so.
good.
And given that the work is planned to happen, maybe just revisiting this in a couple months and seeing where things are at. I just know that given this property, it's a challenging one for us, it has been over the course of history. I don't want it to just go by the wayside if nothing happens, so,
I drive by, check every once in a while.
every day.
Yeah.
Do we need to amend some of the conditions then?
I
or-
don't know that I would tonight, because we didn't have this out for public notice.
Okay.
It was simply added for discussion at the last minute, so, maybe if we revisit this in the January meeting, maybe, we'll make sure it's on the agenda for January, and if you wanna take action at that point, I think that would make sense. Or if you wanna do it December too, that's fine, but.
Keep pushing, I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah,
believe me.
no,
So-
thanks,
You bet, thank you.
thanks.
Thanks.
I don't see anything else.
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Motion in a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned. Now I'm gonna straighten out my mess here. This
Do you have
goes.
any questions?
I don't think so.